Jean-Claude Juncker last night faced ridicule after he claimed Britain will soon regret Brexit while revealing plans for a massive Brussels power grab and even more migration. The European Commission President insisted the wind is back in Europe's sails as he set out his dream for a European superstate with an army, an intelligence agency, the ability to set taxes, and a President of Europe at its helm. Mr. Juncker said the EU should be expanded to include more states in the Balkans and increase the number of countries that use the euro and are part of the bloc's Schengen border-free travel area. Despite the migration crisis creating havoc across the continent, he said it was a necessity to open up more routes for people wanting to move to Europe. But critics immediately dismissed his blueprint for a United States of Europe, with former UKIP leader Nigel Farage proclaiming, "Thank God we're leaving." Mr. Juncker, a former Prime Minister of Luxembourg, said the EU had been left battered and bruised by Britain's decision to leave. But instead of taking the opportunity to rethink plans for further integration between member states, he insisted they should niche the job. "I hear those who say we should not rock the boat now that things have started to get better. But now is not the time to err on the side of caution," he said in his hour-long State of the Union address to MEPs in Strasbourg. "We now have a window of opportunity, but it will not stay open forever. Let us make the most of the momentum, catch the wind in our sails." As Mark Twain wrote, "Years from now we will be more disappointed by the things we did not do, than by the ones we did. Now is the time to build a more united, stronger and more democratic Europe for 2025. Mr. Juncker said that when Britain leaves in March 2019, it will be a very sad and tragic moment in our history, but we will move on. "We will always regret this, and I think that you will regret it as well, soon," he said. Brexit isn't everything, it's not the future of everything, it's not the be-all and end-all. Mr. Farage said Mr. Juncker's address was the most open, honest and truly worrying speech he had heard in his time as an MEP. "The message is very clear," he added. "Brexit has happened, full steam ahead." Addressing the Parliament in response to Mr. Juncker's speech, Mr. Farage said, "All I can say is, thank God we're leaving. You have learned nothing from Brexit." Tory MEP David Campbell Bannerman denounced Mr. Juncker's plan as federalism, red in tooth and claw, while colleague Syed Kamal said the EU was sailing towards a United States of Europe. Mr. Juncker said EU leaders should gather in the Romanian city of Sibiu on the 30th of March, 2019, the day after Brexit, to prepare for a new future without Britain. "Europe only moves forward when it is bold," he said. The single market, Schengen and the single currency were all written off as pipe dreams before they happened. And yet these three ambitious projects are now a reality. We must complete the job now that the sun is shining and whilst it still is. Because when the next clouds appear on the horizon, and they will, it will be too late. Mr. Juncker said welcoming more migrants to Europe was a necessity because it was a continent getting older. Europe is not a fortress and must never become one, he argued. New proposals on the opening up of paths of legal migration will be set out in the coming weeks, Mr. Juncker said. He also demanded the establishment of a Brussels-based intelligence agency to tackle terrorism and a proper European defence union. Mr. Juncker called for the use of the euro and membership of the Schengen zone, which abolished borders between some European countries, to become standard for all EU member states. He said it was high time Romania and Bulgaria were included in the passport-free travel area and Croatia should follow soon. Mr. Juncker said the euro was destined to become the common currency of the entire EU with a new finance minister for the whole of the continent. At present, Denmark and the UK have an opt-out from the euro, while Sweden, the Czech Republic, Croatia, Poland, Bulgaria, Romania and Hungary are yet to join. He also called for tax reforms, urging the use of rules that limit government's veto powers. Mr. Juncker, who as Commission President heads the EU's executive, said after he left the post it should be made more powerful by merging it with the job of European Council President. The European landscape would be clearer and more understandable if the European ship was steered by a single captain, Mr. Juncker said. Downing Street last night rejected Mr. Juncker's suggestion that the country will regret leaving the EU. The Prime Minister's spokesman said, "What we are absolutely focused on is making the best of the opportunities provided by Brexit. We are working towards an ambitious free trade deal and securing a deep and special partnership with the EU." Former Tory leader Ian Duncan Smith denounced Mr. Juncker's speech as barroom utterances.